Hey, welcome to the Malibu Guru podcast. And you know, one of the great debates in the PA-46 world is what's better, a JetPROP or Meridian? Well, we're going to do our best to settle that debate today because I've got a great JetPROP aficionado here in Aaron Poole. Aaron's been flying a JetPROP for a long time. And Deanna today did recurrent training with Chase Key. And Chase thinks his Meridian's the greatest thing that's ever flown. And so we're going to settle the debate today. What's better, a JetPROP or a Meridian?
Clearly JetPROP.
Meridian, for sure.
All the way
Definitely
around.
a Meridian.
The JetPROP. I mean, how much fuel did y'all burn today?
I mean,
Less-
clearly,
More than us. You know, the great thing is that the JetPROP and the Meridian, they're both great airplanes. They meet a need in the marketplace for certain people, specific people. And there's some things that the JetPROP just does better, and there's some things where the Meridian just does a little bit better. You know, if you go back into the history of the JetPROP and the Meridian, the JetPROP precedes the Meridian. Really, if you look at it, you go back in the early days of Piper. You had the Continental Malibu. They had all kind of trouble with the quality of the engine on the Continental Malibu. Piper got upset with it and basically said, "We need to go up to 350 horsepower. We need more horsepower. We want something better." They went to the Lycoming engine in 1989. 89 was the first year of the Mirage, and they call it the Mirage. But they had gobs of trouble in the early 90s. Literally, Piper declared bankruptcy. We had the Lycoming engines had a gob of problems. Literally, the airplane had to go just about be recertified in there because and MMOPA was generated at that time to basically try to save the airplane because basically the FAA came down and said because there was a rash of accidents that included crankshaft failures and props flying off airplanes and aircraft dying, just a lot of problems. And people were wondering, is it the airframe? Well, MMOPA was formed, banded together, and basically had to go back through. The FAA said they grounded the fleet, except for they grounded the fleet for IFR conditions, and it pretty much just nixed it and made it into where you couldn't really use the airplane for what it was used for, which is cross-country IFR platform. And so MMOPA came along, helped save the airplane. They did great work that MMOPA did back in those days. But if you look in the 1990s, Piper had their head down. They were basically trying to solve the problem of we got an engine that's just not doing great at that time. Today, the Lycoming engine that's on a Mirage or an M350, great engine. But in the early 90s, Piper had their head down. They couldn't come up with anything. Well, guess what? Rocket Engineering came up with the JetPROP conversion and basically came up with really a fantastic conversion. They did a great job from the get-go of creating a turbine airplane. And real soon after that, Piper basically said, hey, if we're going to compete, we got to do it now. And so you ended up with a JetPROP, which really does have a great engine. It's either a Dash 21 or a Dash 34 or 35. And the 34, 35 is very similar to each other. And so you have a lightweight version or a light horsepower version, if you want an engine that develops less horsepower up high. So it's kind of a slower speed and less climb rate up high. And then you have the Dash 34, 35, depending on which one was installed on the airplane. And that's an airplane that really does do almost 258 knots and goes a long way. Great conversion and really has a following of people that love it. But Piper then came up with a Meridian. Now, it has the Dash 42A, which is the smallest of the big block engines. So now you have an engine that will develop horsepower up very high. They derated it to 500. But now a Meridian climb up to high altitude and still be torque limited, not ITT limited, because you got this big engine that really does a great job of breathing at high altitude. So you end up with two airplanes that are really kind of different, mainly because of engine, but also because of fuel capacity and weight and all those kind of different things. So I just wanted to open that up for discussion. Chase, let me open it up with you. Why'd you pick a Meridian?
Well, I looked at both of them, and I had a friend that had a JetPROP and friends that had Meridians, but ultimately I picked the Meridian because of the simplicity of the fuel simpler fuel system. I like the inertial separator always being down and not having to worry about it. It was my first turbine aircraft, so that was a foreign concept to me, so the simpler the better.
Yeah.
A little bit more useful load, and then I like that it was a factory-built airplane with factory support.
Yeah, so in other words, for you, something that if it's not factored, the fact that an STC is just something that it puts a question mark in your brain.
I don't know if it's so much the STC, but from the parts availability, if something happens to say rocket engineering, I guess something could happen to Piper too, but.
Yeah, in other words, parts in the future. Could that be a thing?
And it's still in production, so there's a good likelihood of finding parts.
Right. I would agree wholeheartedly. And that one of the great things about buying an airplane that's currently in production is you know you're going to have parts availability for sure. Deanna, you're going Meridian all the way. Did I hear that?
Well, I mean, I have to support the one I flew today. So, yeah, and for a lot of the same reasons. One, y'all got to deal with 6 fuel pumps, switching tanks when you needed to. We just had to start it up and push the throttle forward, and off we went. No messing with extra fuel pumps or switching fuel tanks.
Okay, so let me write this down. Fuel system plus Meridian. And I would agree with them. The Meridian is arguably one of the best fuel systems I've ever seen in any airplane. Simple, don't have to monkey with it, seems to work really, really, really well. Reliable indication. For me flying both airplanes, Meridian wins on the fuel system.
Yeah. Now, granted, you were right earlier. Y'all burned less fuel down low than we did, and Recurrent is about a whole lot of low-level flying. Just about everything is below 3,000 feet, shooting approaches, maneuvering, with the exception of our emergency maneuvers where we climbed up to 17,000 feet and, and started our engine out procedures from there and started gliding in. So,
she made you descend all the way from 7?
17.
17.
and 30 miles out. And it did it beautifully.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's fabulous. And by the way, you put a new G500 TXI in your
new
Meridian.
touchscreen G500.
Did you use the flight path marker, and did it assist you in doing engine out maneuvering?
No, because someone's still learning how to do all his updates, and the synthetic vision wasn't there.
Oh, hold out your hand.
I've got a stick. You need to borrow it? Wrap.
By the way, did you use the flight path marker in your engine out stuff today, and how did it go?
Absolutely, I did, and I learned a ton in terms of, glide slope into runways and when you're going to overshoot versus undershoot, and using that thing to calculate your angle of attack. I mean, it was the flight path. That thing's a game changer.
Yeah, there's really 2 ways to do an engine out, in my opinion. One is if you've made the runway, and that is glide over the runway, spiral down, enter a left downwind, and land. And the other one is to use the flight path marker. And there's pluses and minuses to both. There's places to use both of those, but I think the flight path marker is just single. And I didn't make you come down from 17,000. I made you come down from like
8,500.
Yeah, something like that. It was
you know
a piece
who
of
was
cake.
sweating less during the exercise?
Who?
The ones who went up to 17,000.
Yeah, I guess so. There is an advantage. There is an advantage to going up high on a hot day, because today I'm telling you the ISO is plus 21. Yeah. Okay, now, let me give you another advantage to the Meridian, because today we were looking at ITT on takeoff, and when you advance the ITT, you can get the JetPROP is one where you really need to be careful where the ice door is. In other words, it's not just flip the ice door on, flip it off. You want to be cognizant where that ice door is. Now, the glory of the ice door is that you have control,
right?
And you probably enjoy that. But the bad news is there may be a time when it's on or off when it shouldn't be.
Right.
And so how have you dealt with that ice door?
Well, I mean, you just try to be cognizant of, when I'm on the ground and not worried about temperature control, make sure it's open. When you got to be really diligent about, visible moisture, turn that thing on. You just got to, I don't know, the JetPROP to me is I feel like the Meridian, Piper did a fantastic job of making it simple. Yes. They really did.
Yep. Pilot friendly.
JetPROP is a thinking man's airplane. You got to be thinking all the time. Yep. And certainly there are some things that you can manage to forget because we're all fallible. And, it's just like we landed earlier, and I noticed when we got on the taxiway, but we were coming off the runway, that I had not turned the ice door on because we had turned it off to take off because it was so hot today.
Right.
And so that's one of those things you can forget. And so, do you want to burn a little more fuel and make sure your engine's safeguarded all the time? I mean, that's a definite advantage for the Meridian. I think there's other great things though about being able to turn it on and off. Efficiency.
Yeah. Yep. If you're an aerodynamicist or an engineer, and you're looking for the most efficient inlet for an airplane, you're not looking at the Meridian sucks. Yeah. I mean, it's just absolutely atrocious. Matter of fact, a good example for this is to look at the TBM series. Mm-hmm. You have the 7 and 800 series, which have an inlet that's not nearly as refined as the TBM 900 series. The 900 series goes a lot faster, and much of that is from just a reduction in what's called interference drag, where you have airflows competing with one another, and you get higher pressure because the airflows compete with each other, and you end up with what's called interference drag, and it just slows you down. The TBM 900 series, they moved that inlet closer to the propeller, streamlined it so you don't have competing forces, and therefore you end up with an airplane that just goes faster. I think one of the things that's going to come out in the future, I don't know when, but I hope soon, I hope companies out there to re-engineer the front end of a Meridian or the M600 or M700. My guess is you could re-engineer the front end of an M600, M700 and gain 20 knots. I mean, it's that inefficient. And plus you have the ice door on all the time. But you got to go back to what was Piper thinking when they made the Meridian, and that was they felt that the JetPROP was overly complex. Let me give you an example, or a quick one. We talked about fuel. You're going to switch the fuel tanks in a JetPROP, and you're going to have a yellow light come on followed by a red light, or you have a yellow light, red light come on, then the wing pump light come on. So you get this blinking light telling you that, a wing pump came on to pump fuel. And then you got to manage that fuel system. And if you look at a Meridian, you're never doing anything. If you're in the auto position, it's working great. They made it simple. Same thing with temperature control. You take your temperature and turn it to cold. Where for your airplane, we got to turn a blower to hot or to high or low, and then we got an air conditioner on. And if we want to go to heater, really you have 4 steps on a JetPROP to be able to get maximum heat. Where all he's doing is turning a rheostat, and so the Meridian's just a much more, I don't want to say simple, because behind the scenes of that Meridian, what's happening when you turn that rheostat, there's a lot going on. And a good pilot's still got to understand what those systems are doing. But there's simplicity in the pilot and what he has to do or she has to do. And the complexities behind the scenes. JetPROP, the complexities on the panel. Does that make sense?
It does.
And
it does.
And so it just comes down to, what do you like? Do you like that complexity behind the scenes and simplicity on the panel, or do you like it otherwise?
I'm fidgety anyway, so pushing the buttons all the time.
Pushing the button, having something to do.
Just fine.
Yeah.
You also have twice the climb, and you have control of your prop, and so you've got some other things that are fun to fly about that airplane.
We noticed on your last startup, while you were waiting on Joe to get in, you were able to leave your prop in the feathered position so as to not buffet your entry and exit door as much. We can't do that in the Meridian.
You can start the JetPROP with prop and feather, especially in a tailwind, because then all those exhaust gases are pushed away, and you can literally load up your passengers in an airplane where you got the air conditioner going already. Wonderful little idea. In a Meridian, you're never going to do that because you're going to blast the air against them. Let's give another idea. The Meridian has no prop control, none whatsoever, but we got a prop control on the JetPROP. But you still have to deal with that, with that for sure. So you have some control, but yet it gives you something that you have to manage.
Makes for a lot of fun and simulated engine outs.
Feather
that thing.
That's a good example. The JetPROP's the one PA-46 where we can take the prop and go all the way to feather in flight. And of course, we do it on a training regime, and we were studied about it, and we don't ever have a feathered prop below about 3,000 feet AGL. It's just bad juju. But I feather a prop every time so that we can show a pilot the advantages of a feathered prop versus unfeathered, and we can also show the versus a prop that's windmilling versus not windmilling. I can't really show you that in the Meridian. I got to shut your engine down, which we don't shut engines down in training. Period. In any airplane, we simulate everything. I can simulate way better in a JetPROP.
The thing I
And
like,
you did that a bunch today.
We did do that a lot. Today. I enjoyed the heck out of it. I enjoyed doing all that stuff. But the other thing I really like about the JetPROP is that forward baggage compartment.
Yeah, that's
I
nice.
keep a Sidewinder in there, so I can move the thing around. I keep windshield cleaner. I keep rags. That's all in one little compartment that pretty much nobody's ever going to see unless I'm really trying to balance a load. And I really, really like that because otherwise all that stuff would be either left behind in the hangar or rattling around in the back of the cabin when you're already dealing with, rear of center issues to begin with.
Yeah,
I had that baggage compartment in my Saratoga, and I miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah. One day, if I could speak into Piper's life, and I've never been able to do that. It's never occurred. I give them a lot of suggestions, but they never listen to my suggestion. But I think there's going to be either an M800 or an M750 one day, and I think that they're going to take that engine and shove it forward just a little bit and provide. I mean, a 12-inch baggage would just be a beautiful. A baggage compartment gives you the opportunity, number one, to throw some stuff up there that you don't want in the cockpit, that you know what I'm saying, that you don't want in the airplane, and number two, it gives you a counterbalance for weight and balance. If you've got some heavy stuff, you're going to be heavy on the tail. You can put one suitcase up front, and that movement that far shifts things for you. Yeah, as far as that's concerned. Are you more excited when you get a JetPROP client for a recurrent training or a Meridian, or do you care?
I don't really care. Now, with the Meridians, if I see a Meridian on the schedule, I'm like, great, it's a Meridian. I know exactly what I'm climbing into. I know where all the switches are going to be. I know there are 3 basic avionics packages, and some of the older ones, like Chase just did, he pulled out some older Megget stuff and put in some Garmin things.
Right.
So some of that's changeable, but for the most part, I know exactly what I'm climbing into every time I climb into a Meridian. When I climb into a JetPROP, who knows? I mean,
right. It's a smorgasbord of you don't know what they've got bolted onto this. It's the same thing with a Continental Malibu. You never know what they've got. JetPROP's the same way.
Right. Yeah. The Avionics can be any conglomeration of anyone from the owners from, the mid 80s on to 2009, any mix match there. The panel, the fuel selectors, the generator, alternator, the JetPROP switches, those are going to be wherever JetPROP had space for them, within that panel. So they may be up high, they may be down low, they may be on the right, on the left, you just don't know. So the JetPROPs usually, if I'm not familiar with the plane, I usually like to ask for a panel picture, in advance, or ask them what they've got installed, just so I kind of know what I'm getting into.
Yeah, I agree. The one of the best compliments that ever came to the JetPROP was from Garmin, because Garmin made JetPROP the launch customer for the GFC 600 autopilot, and which is a wonderful, wonderful autopilot. So you see a lot of JetPROPs out there with the GFC 600. You see a lot of not a lot of Meridians. You see some Meridians beginning to get the GFC 600, but in the Meridian, you're going to either find the old Megget or the STEC 1500, sometimes the STEC 3100. But in a JetPROP, it's just the smorgasbord. It's just all over the place. You just never know. And as an instructor, you really need to be up on we are master. All these airplanes are so different and varying that you really need to be a jack of all trades sort of person, certainly when it comes to avionics.
And especially autopilots.
Absolutely.
Autopilots and the JetPROPs just really run, like you said, there's 3 that you'll run into for the most part in the Meridians, maybe 4. In the JetPROP, you've got every autopilot from the original Continental Malibu through the 2009 Mirages. I mean,
right.
and whatever's been replaced in between that as well.
Right. I would say the place that the JetPROP wins hands down is fuel efficiency.
Yep. True.
I mean, no doubt about it. How much fuel are you burning per hour in cruise at high altitude on a regular basis?
About 34 gallons per hour.
Okay, and how many gallons are you
36, 37, 38, depending on the
fuel surface. Yeah.
Yep.
I usually tell people 32, 33, maybe because I'm pulling the power back just a tiny bit, and I usually say 39 to 40, and depending upon where you go. But there's easily going to be 5-6 gallons more in a Meridian to do the same
especially
work.
the climb too.
Correct. Yes. And that's the other. If you look at a Meridian, if you have a lot of ground time that you anticipate, like I'll make this up, but let's say you come out of an airport, single runway, big city, something like Addison, where you're going to be sitting on the runway for 30, 45 minutes waiting to take off. Well, a JetProp's going to burn about 15 gallons an hour just sitting at idle.
Yeah, well, we're 25.
Exactly. A lot more in a Meridian just to get that big engine turning, because most of the energy is just in turning itself to create the compression, to create the combustion, and then we're using power from that point on. And of course, when you take off on a Meridian, the numbers go way high on that takeoff, and they go up on a JetProp too, but more in a Meridian.
Well, let's turn that ground fuel burn into a positive here. So I've been misfueled in a Meridian before, and we all know they're weight sensitive. So going down to the end of the runway and sitting there and burning off that extra fuel was a breeze.
That's one way to look at it.
I mean, come on.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. If you need to burn off fuel, hold on. While we're on that one right there, if we're really going down that road, one of the things that the JetProp has is the ability to pump fuel overboard.
Yep.
And you know what they did that for? The reason they did that is because they were going for a higher gross weight. Most of the testing at JetProp was done at 400 pounds over gross weight in the hopes of being certified for that. Now, that certification never came. But what they wanted to have was the ability to pump fuel overboard. So when you hit the emergency pump and your header tank highlight comes on, that's telling you I'm pumping fuel overboard. Now, they did that so that they knew you couldn't land over gross. And so if you took off at a higher gross weight, meaning if they got the STC with a higher gross weight, they didn't. But if they would have, all that testing's right there, to be able to take off, you have a problem now. Well, now you hit your emergency pump, literally pump fuel overboard, and then come back and land underweight. Does that make sense? No one does that for it. It never happened.
Tree huggers love it.
The tree huggers love it.
I was about to say, sounds like an EPA nightmare.
It does. But that's the history behind, why that happened. And you do have one more advantage in a JetProp, but I would argue you have more and more disadvantage because you can pump fuel overboard in a JetProp. You don't know what you're doing.
Right.
So you don't have to sit at the end of the runway with the JetProp. We can just pee it on the ground. And it's all good. And it's all good. What's another advantage for the Meridian, Deanna?
Oh, goodness. I feel like we're losing here. Help me
Interior
out.
You're losing.
Interior seats and some of the headroom.
Yeah, I will. The tube is the same in a JetProp and a Meridian. Just the fuselage, the dimensions of it. But I will tell you, Piper has gotten better and better and better and better. And you have a 1989. I will say, you have an 89.
It's tight up front.
It is. It is. The interiors as Piper has moved through the years. You want the best interior ever. I've not even seen it yet, but I'm sure the M700 is going to be stellar because the M600 is a way better interior from an appointment, lighting, placement of items. It's way better than the older versions. And I mean, the worst version on the interior by far is a Continental Malibu. I mean, the interior of a Continental Malibu is not friendly to tall people. It's got the armrest in the seats themselves. It's got these cloth curtains that go back and forth horizontally, and it's just a disaster of an interior appointment. So his airplane, without even looking at his Meridian, knowing it's later than your 89 JetProp, he's got a better interior, unless it's just newer.
I don't doubt it. And I can tell you, I feel like that I have less legroom in the JetProp than I had in my Saratoga.
Yeah.
And I've got a friend who's he's rather large. Just he's like 6'5", and
he's strong.
He gets in there. No, I mean he's not fat. He's just big, and he sits in there, and the yoke's right up against his legs, and it's he's got to get the seat. I got to take the oxygen bottle out of where it normally is. The seat leans back. Joe does the same thing.
I lean back.
So it's tight. I don't know if they fix that in the Meridian or not because I haven't sat. I'm not sure I've sat in a Meridian.
The 2004s and newer have a little bit better headroom, and some of the 3s, I think.
And Chase happens to be 6'5".
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
compared to your friend.
Yeah, so let's talk about that just for a minute.
Joe's
I mean,
6'4" for comparison.
There
so
you go.
got
You're
two-
6'5", and you're fitting in the Meridian pretty good.
I make myself fit, but yeah,
You
learn the Malibu shuffle.
Yeah. You get the shoehorn out and a crowbar, and you're able to get yourself in where you need to go.
Once I get in, it's comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. Once you're in, it's comfortable and a good. I don't have any troubles with it. I can fit in the JetPROP as well, but I've done it for a long time. I kind of know how to position my body in the right place, and so you can be 6'5" and get in a Meridian.
Yep.
Yeah, without a doubt. Chase, talk about us what you use a Meridian for.
Traveling around Texas and Oklahoma mainly for work.
Yeah.
80% of the time it's just me.
Yeah.
So it's a perfect machine for me.
For one person to be able to get from 400 or 500 miles.
Yep.
Hard to beat.
Yep.
Hard to beat.
From a fuel efficiency and safety, you got the boots, the turbine engine, coming out of the Saratoga. Didn't have any of that. So.
Let's talk about one other advantage to Meridian. You just mentioned it. You mentioned the boots. If you look at the boots on a JetPROP, and you look at the boot size on a Meridian, the Meridian's much bigger, goes way back further. It's just a better boot as far as providing that protection against an icing event on the wings. So I would say the Meridian, it has a much more robust electrical system.
I would also say it's got a better oxygen system, at least for the pilot. That quick dawn oxygen mask in the Meridian is far easier to don and use quickly in an emergency than the JetPROP.
I would even say the JetPROP is janky. I mean, it's just it is. I mean, it's just not a great mask. I mean, and more than likely, it's stuffed off into the corner and forgotten about. Some people.
Well, I keep my mask out if I'm going over about 16,000. I've got that mask out and I've checked it before I take off.
Yeah, and you're laying it,
and it's laying where all I got to do is reach down and grab it and then turn on a valve. But you're right. That quick dawn mask is pretty cool in the Meridian.
Yeah. The Meridian mask is great till you have to put it back up in that little cubby hole.
Right. Right. Putting it up after use is nearly a maintenance function.
Yeah, it's real tough. Super tough as far as that's concerned. But the icing is an advantage to the Meridian as far as that's concerned.
And the fact that in the Meridian it's usually automated, and in the JetPROP it's often single cycle, just from the year models of the airframe. So in the Meridian, you can turn the icing system on and essentially forget about it until you're out of the icing conditions and to turn it off. Whereas in the JetPROP, you've got to be a little bit more conscientious as to when you're using that system and deploying the boots.
Yeah, so let me expand upon that just a bit. In a Meridian, you push the button and then it'll expand the boots, retract the boots, and then do it again on a cycle. And it'll do that till you turn the system off. Whereas a JetPROP, you push it one time and one push, one deployment.
One cycle.
And you're done. And then if you want it again, you got to push it again. And you got to remember to push it again. Again, advantage, I would say advantage Meridian in this case, in that if you really get into an icing event, you want to push the button. You don't want to hit a timer and figure out how long was it. That's why I tell people in a JetPROP, if you look out on the wings, you see a bunch of ice, push the button, because it's not gonna hurt anything. You know what I'm saying? Push the button. Go ahead and get deployed. Whereas a Meridian, you turn it on and then you just let it roll.
Yep.
And so I would say the icing consideration is probably a better for the Meridian. Aaron, talk to us about what you do. What's your main mission? What's your bread and butter?
I'm barely on the edge of needing a turbine. A huge number of my trips are less than 200 nautical miles. I mean, it's just I bump around Texas, going to a lot of different small towns and going hunting and fishing, that sort of stuff. I would say 80% of my flying's by myself.
I think everybody needs a turbine. There is no edge of needing a turbine. We all need one.
Well, yeah. I mean, but Joe and I had this conversation before I ever bought the plane, and we talked about it, and I really thought that a piston would be fine for my needs. Now I'm so glad that I did that, because, now we rarely ever fly commercial unless there's going to be a real big weather issue. We're just using that JetPROP, and man, does that make life easier.
Yeah, it sure does. And even when you're going 300 miles, 200 miles, still advantageous to get up to altitude. You're going. I mean, if I've got 200 miles to go, I'm going up into the flight levels.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can't say enough good about the plane. It's one of the best things I ever did. I absolutely love it. And I think just the PA-46 airframe with a turbine engine, it doesn't matter whether you're talking various M classes. I'm leaving out the 600 SLS, which is a whole different class of plane in terms of range and auto land, the sort of thing. But if you're comparing what I'll call first, second generation Meridians and JetPROPs. They're both just fantastic planes that really do the job well, whether you're going 150 miles or you're going, 700 miles.
Okay, so let me just ask, because the next thing I was going to ask about is dispatch reliability. How often when you go out to the airplane, you're planning to go flying, you open up the hangar door, and you can't go because something broke?
I've never had it happen.
So it's
so far.
It's 100%. It's just
my dispatch reliability is totally it's totally weather dependent, which is, you can't blame any plane for that, right?
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
I'm going to be
It's
very
not-
careful about the weather I'm going in. But I mean, you take that thing in once a year for annual unless something breaks.
you're able to go annual to annual just about, and I mean you might need a tire here and there, but
Correct.
a
battery. You change. I just changed batteries.
I'm sorry.
Even though it was in between annuals, but
We
it
all feel
was
that
time. But they're just incredibly reliable planes.
Okay, talk to me about dispatch reliability,
I've had
Chase.
Hang on, I think we ought to go back and talk about the difference in a Meridian battery and
Oh,
a
yeah.
JetPROP battery.
Oh my gosh!
Because
Yeah.
when Aaron says he's got to change a battery, and we're like, oof, and it's a big deal for a JetPROP. There are two batteries, and they're custom made for the JetPROP, and they are not anywhere near as accessible as the Meridian battery up in the nose. They're underneath that back seat.
That's right. But I will give you an advantage to the JetPROP in this. So let's say you're taking a North Atlantic crossing, and you're going to park on, I'm making it up, in Goose Bay, Canada, and you know that you got to start it up in the morning. Well, you can go to your JetPROP battery, and you can unplug them and cart the batteries to the hotel room and keep them in 69-degree temperatures.
I think you're confusing it with a Meridian.
No. The Meridian is so heavy, you're not going to do it.
Oh.
You're just, and you got to pull about 20 screws to be able to get to the Meridian. It's just not an easy thing. JetPROP, I can access it pretty easily. I can get that, and because battery health is so important for the engine start. So if you want a nice thermally controlled battery as far as the temperature's right, well, you could take those two batteries and go to the hotel room with them, come back, hook them up, start them up and now you got your engine. If I went to Goose Bay, Canada in the wintertime, that battery's going to sit in that negative 30 temperature, and I better hope I have a ground start because that battery's got to suffer through that. The other thing is that you got two batteries, you got one, but your one battery's more expensive than his two batteries. It's just so expensive. But there is a lot of battery manufacturers that are putting energy into research and development. There's better batteries for your airplane. In other words, the newest type of Meridian batteries are stinking expensive, but they sure do crank that engine over, and it just does a good job. So, and I guess this is a good example where the Meridian has a battery you turn on, turn off, but you don't. You've got the ability to select number one or number two, and or both. And if you only select one or two, not both, and you go start your engine, now you're only starting with one battery.
Right.
So you better really know what you're doing.
Well, you just got to, to me, you got to pay attention to your numbers, right? And so I know what those numbers look like. I have done that before where I left it on one battery and immediately upon hitting the starter went, what's wrong with these numbers?
That's right.
And shut it all back down and figure out what's going on. And then.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to dispatch reliability for you, Chase. Tell me, what's your dispatch reliability look like?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I've only had one flight canceled because of a maintenance issue. It was a left brake issue when I pulled it out of the hangar, and had a brake issue on the
on just
side.
one side.
Yep, just the left side.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Other than that, it's been weather, which
Yeah,
you're
and
not
it
going
was
to control.
and it was an easy fix, and got it all done back up in the air. So generally speaking, high 90s. In other words,
yes.
I mean, you've flown a couple hundred flights and you've had one. So it's a really, really good. So either airplane, turbine reliability, turbine power, great airplane in that respect. Deanna, what else can you think of as you tout the Meridian?
As I tout the Meridian. I think we've hit the highlights. I think they're both great airplanes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Either way you go, there's advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah. So I would say if there's somebody listening to this and they're thinking JetPROP or they're thinking Meridian, if you want control, if you want efficiency, you want a cheaper purchase price, like an equitable Meridian's probably $200,000 more than an equitable JetPROP in terms of years and hours on the engine and avionics. but you're also going to have more complexity. The arguable support in the future might be a question mark in terms of is rocket engineering going to be able to be viable in the future? So far, it's been good, but there is a question mark. There's more potential for Piper to be there. And so the other side of it, if you just want a from the factory airplane, if you're fully of the belief that fuel is not the most expensive part of flying, that is the annual inspections and all the different things, then, and if you want easy pilot operation.
Yeah, simplicity.
Slightly higher payload.
Slightly higher payload. You know, this is one of the things that JetPROP people don't talk just a whole lot about, but the payload is pretty paltry in a JetPROP.
True.
As long as it's you and 2 or 3 others in a bag or two, you're probably okay. But you really need to watch that. Now, you need to watch it in a Meridian too, but the Meridian is more robust. The wing on a Meridian has thicker skin than a JetPROP. And just the skin itself, since it's a semi-monocoque construction, that thicker skin provides more rigidity and strength. So just the wing on a Meridian is simply better than a JetPROP, especially your JetPROP in the sense that the pre-1999 has what we call the small spar. Now, it's still strong, still does everything, but your spar, your wing is much stronger than his. And so it has a higher VMO. And so arguably the Meridian just has more strength. So strength, stability is in support. There are 3 S's right there. Strength, stability, and support's probably in for the Meridian. And JetPROP, if you want efficiency, if you don't mind complexity and you want control in exchange for that, and if you want to have more horsepower, because you got to think 560 horsepower on 4,300 pounds versus 500 horsepower on 5,300, 200, somewhere up in their pounds. So your airplane's going to get off the runway faster. So which one do you like? If I'm really being honest, we're making this a JetPROP versus Meridian. I love the JetPROP just because one day there's going to be a day where we own a JetPROP. And we will own a JetPROP one day just because it's the first place that I think we can get into and own our own turbine, and we're going to do that one day. We'll probably own a Meridian one day too because they're both great airplanes. All right. Aaron, Chase, Deanna, and Joe Casey, I'll appreciate you thinking about the JetPROP versus the Meridian. Hopefully you'll make a good choice. Whatever you're flying, we'd love to help you train in your PA-46, whether it's new or whether you're going to refresher training. We'd love to be a part of that. We speak the language of the PA-46 here at the Malibu Guru podcast.